Hello and welcome to the program. I am Bisi Adebayo. Coming up today, Moody's Investor Service projects negative 2021 outlook for African banks amid difficult operating conditions. Zambian authorities formally request financing arrangements with the International Monetary Fund. And Kenya Airways to dedicate at least 5 aircraft to hauling of COVID-19 vaccines across the world. But let's begin the show as usual with intraday numbers, which were mostly positive, except for the NSE here in Nigeria, which sustains the negative sentiment. In South Africa, the JSE jumped 0.4%, while the EGX30 advanced 0.16%. In Kenya, the market closed negative on Tuesday. It was down 0.12%. And major markets we track in the Middle East were all in the positive territory at intraday. Now, Saudi Arabia's benchmark index gained the most by 0.34%, while the Qatari index added 0.1%. In the UAE, both markets in Abu Dhabi and Dubai advanced 0.29%. And in Europe, stocks are trading higher today, and that comes as market focus in the region remains firmly on the progress of post-Brexit trade deal talks between the EU and the UK, as well as talks of a new US stimulus package. But Chelsea Jelani will be telling us more about all of this. Good afternoon, Chelsea. US stocks ended Tuesday at record highs with talks of a new US stimulus package and progress on vaccines driving markets higher. Have we seen that optimism carry over into Frankfurt trading? Chelsea, I was asking how the markets in Frankfurt are performing. Of course, yesterday we saw U.S. stocks ending at record highs, and that's driven by the new U.S. stimulus package and progress on vaccines driving the markets higher. So what sort of optimism are we seeing at Frankfurt today?
So stocks here in Frankfurt have followed this international rally a bit higher. As you can see behind me, the DAX is up a little under 1%. And just as you said, there's a lot of optimism in the market right now, particularly about what we've seen in terms of vaccines. Yesterday, the UK began its vaccination campaign. The US is expected to approve at least one vaccine by the end of the week. So that news is helping to offset some of these concerns we're seeing about the continued rise in infections, both here in Europe and Germany, in the United States as well. And of course, the U.S. stimulus efforts are also helping to really boost the mood. This has been in discussions really over the past several months. Since the summer, U.S. Congress hasn't really been able to make much progress. But now we're hearing from both sides that they are very committed to coming to some sort of deal by the end of the year. What that package will entail is still being negotiated and fought hard for in Washington, but investors are hopeful that the U.S. will be able to pass a stimulus package in some form over the next couple of weeks, and that would be a boost both for the U.S. economy and for the rest of the world.
With the EU and the UK still deadlocked over Brexit talks, Britain is turning to the US for new trade deals. Of course, the UK rather, had said that it plans to drop tariffs that had been imposed by the EU on US goods over an aircraft subsidy dispute. But will that be enough to get the US on board?
This is a major peace offering from the UK. These tariffs are a bit complicated. They were imposed by the EU as part of this very long, 16-year-long dispute over the support that the EU and the US give to plane makers like Boeing and Airbus. Both sides have hit back and forth with billions of dollars worth of tariffs, and the UK, as part of the EU, also imposed these tariffs on the United States. They're now saying that they want to take those those tariffs off once the Brexit transition period expires and they're officially out of the EU. They want to really come forward and make this peace offering, this olive branch for the U.S., because obviously the UK really needs partners right now. The negotiations over a trade deal with the EU have been very contentious. Right now, Boris Johnson is on his way to Brussels. He's expected to have dinner tonight with Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the EU Commission. Whether they'll be able to strike a deal is a big question. So the UK is definitely looking elsewhere. The US is one of its biggest trading partners, and if they were able to reach some sort of deal with the US, that would really help ease some of the pain of the Brexit process. So that's been a big focus for Boris Johnson. Whether the new incoming US administration is going to make that a priority themselves, I think that's a bigger question. They have a lot on their plate. They're dealing with still a very intense coronavirus outbreak. So I think we could potentially see the U.S. not making this the same sort of priority that the UK is making it right now.
Oh, just before you go, Chelsea, German deaths from the coronavirus have hit record highs today, and Chancellor Angela Merkel proposed a stricter lockdown that would shut most businesses down after Christmas. Of course, Germany has already borrowed a record amount to offset the pandemic economic effects. Can that country actually afford another full lockdown?
I would say that Germany can afford another lockdown. They have a lot of fiscal firepower. The bigger question is whether there will be the political will to spend more money, to borrow more money. It is looking increasingly likely that there will have to be a stronger lockdown, more restrictions in Germany, potentially after Christmas, that could see businesses nationwide have to close again. That would mean more businesses need support, more people will need support. Germany has already, as you said, borrowed a record amount this year. They plan to borrow about 180 billion euros next year as well. That for Germany is a big break from tradition. Over the past several years, Germany has really stuck very close to running a balanced budget. So they came into this crisis with a lot of room in their budget. But also the market right now is very favorable for governments like Germany to borrow. Record low interest rates, a lot of demand for safe assets like a German government bond. So if they do want to continue borrowing, investors will buy up those bonds. There really is no limit that we've seen to the demand for an asset like a German government bond. But there's also a lot of concern about rising debt levels here in Germany. Some politicians say that this is really coming at the expense of future generations. The flip side, of course, is if we don't move now, if there isn't more economic support, then this will come at the expense of this current generation.
All right, Chelsea, thank you. We'll see you again tomorrow. And in the UK, the markets are trending higher at intraday ahead of crunch Brexit talks. But let's bring in Juliana Olayinka for details of this. Good afternoon, Juliana. It's all about Brexit right now. Tell us, what's the latest?
Well, the latest is Boris Johnson is still very much in London. He's currently answering some pretty significant questions at the dispatch box. It's Wednesday, so Prime Minister's questions are still taking hold. The leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, started off his question with Brexit. What's happening? You promised us an oven-ready deal. That was your key manifesto campaign. We don't have it yet. There are no surprises, though, of course, that it's come down to the wire. Boris Johnson is expected to have dinner with Ursula von der Leyen at 1900 GMT local. I believe that's 8 o'clock in Nigeria. And it is going to be some tough talks. There's still no agreement over fishing rights. There's still no agreement over level playing field and governance. The EU 27 want to know who is going to actually govern these decisions that are made over the next couple of days. That's going to be pretty tense. A lot of traders and investors are pretty positive, which is why the all-share, the pound are rising high at intraday. And that's really because of that internal market bill. Yesterday, very, very surprising, at the last minute, Michael Gove, the Duchy of Lancaster, who is in charge of a no-deal Brexit, made the announcement that a deal had been done with the island of Ireland. Northern Ireland, parts of it anyway, are going to be staying in the single market in the customs union. Unionists are really not happy. We've also heard from the Scottish National Party. They're not happy as well that Northern Ireland seems to have got a great deal and is staying in the EU. But of course, that was a huge controversial topic. So the fact that Britain have now ripped up that Northern Ireland protocol and have decided to stick with the withdrawal agreement that they signed, sealed and delivered about this time last year is a good sign. So perhaps a deal could potentially be done. But at the moment, nobody knows nothing until the end of that dinner. We know typically in Brussels, a lot of these dinners last way into the midnight. And if Boris Johnson and Ursula von der Leyen are able to concede somewhat, then what sources in Downing Street are saying is that they're expecting Michel Barnier and his counterpart, Lord David Frost, to pick up the negotiations and run through them on the weekend. But who knows? An hour is a long time in Brexit world.
We just have to wait. Well, I spoke about this with Chelsea briefly, and I'm talking about the fact that the UK has abandoned EU tariffs on the plane manufacturer Boeing in the hope of securing a quick post-Brexit trade deal with the US. What's the implication of this? I mean, you're in the UK where all of this is happening. Is this likely to change anything?
No, it's impossible for there to be a quick trade deal with the US. If you think that it's taken 4.5 years and we're down to the wire with the EU, to think that an economy as large as America can do a quick trade deal with Britain is completely out of the question. And it's unfortunate for Prime Minister Boris Johnson that he just does not have that spark with President-elect Joe Biden as he does with the outgoing President Donald Trump. But as Chelsea was just saying, you know, this is still pretty much a significant olive branch. Liz Truss, the UK Trade Secretary, did actually say in her statement that, you know, they decided to remove these tariffs as a way to show the US and America, their closest global allies, that they are keen to strike some sort of a trade deal with them. Just going back to the Boeing Airbus trade spat that's been going on for years, the World Trade Organization did deem that both sides, both America and Europe, most particularly France, Germany and Britain, were illegally subsidizing their big airline carriers, and both sides did put these retaliatory trade tariffs on different goods. I believe at the moment America has slapped a 25% trade tariff on Scottish whiskey, jumpers and pullovers, and now Britain have removed their own tariffs on some American goods, and it is a peace sign. But last week, I believe Joe Biden, in one of his biggest interviews since being declared the winner of that historic election, did say that his priority is going to be domestic policy. It's about investing in America, not Britain. So that's going to be a slap in the face for Britain. But of course, you know, an olive branch is still difficult to refuse. So we'll just have to see how that relationship progresses. But of course, in Britain, what is the most important thing at the moment is making sure they can secure a trade deal in just a matter of days.
All right, Juliana, you touched on how the markets are performing, of course, all in the green at intraday, but can we actually have the numbers?
Yes, all in the green at intraday. Positive gains in the morning have stayed. Politics, and Brexit is the only focus on investors. The fact that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is going to be getting on a plane now has really given some positive sentiment. At intraday, the FTSE All-Share is up 0.56%. The FTSE 100 is up by 0.55%. And the FTSE 250 is up by 0.41%. In the currencies market, pound also up on the US dollar by 0.62%. Up on the euro by 0.5% and up on the Japanese yen by 0.64% at intraday, Bissy.
Thank you, Juliana. We'll just wait and see how everything plays out in the coming days. To enjoy the rest of your day. Global credit ratings firm Moody's Investor Service has published a new report on African banks, saying the outlook will remain negative into 2021 amid difficult operating conditions and sovereign pressures straining banks' credit profiles. According to the report released today, Moody's expects the drop in oil price to continue to take its toll on Nigerian banks, while the coronavirus reverses Ghanaian banks' improving financial metrics. South African and Nigerian banks are expected to face acute macro challenges, while loan quality and liquidity are the main issues for Angolan and Tunisian banks. Heading into next year, Moody's expects non-performing loans to potentially double from 2019 levels as payment holidays expire, while increased provisioning needs, reduced business generation, and margin pressure will erode banks' profitability. A high-level International Monetary Fund delegation is visiting Zambia following an invitation by the government for a financing agreement with the IMF to support their reform efforts. A statement from the IMF says the Washington-based fund is currently assessing this request. The African copper producer stumbled into the coronavirus crisis in a very bad shape, having borrowed $12 billion from international creditors. It has now become the latest country to default on its debts after talks with its creditors hit an impasse. And Kenya Airways has revealed that it will be dedicating at least 5 of its planes to hauling of COVID-19 vaccines across the world as more drug makers receive emergency authorization for their doses. According to the airline's manager, the planes are fitted with temperature controls that could support cold storage, which is needed by most vaccines for them to function properly once administered. For vaccines such as Pfizer, which require cold storage of -70 degrees Celsius, the airline says it's considering the use of cooler boxes with dry ice during transportation. The airline's official also sees the possibility that the vaccines distributed across Africa will be more of the type with less extreme temperature conditions. The International Renewable Energy Agency and the African Development Bank have agreed to jointly support investment in low-carbon energy projects, and this move is expected to advance Africa's energy transition. This partnership will focus on enhancing the role of renewable energy in African countries' nationally determined contributions under the Paris Accord and other sustainable development objectives. The pact is also expected to pave the way for collaboration on the African Development Bank's Desert to Power initiative, which aims to mobilize public and private funding to install 10 gigawatts of solar power by 2025 in 11 countries in Africa's Sahel region. Let's talk oil prices now. They're trading higher today, and that's coming amid positive news on COVID-19 vaccines, which lifted investors' hopes for a recovery in fuel demand. Brent crude futures were up 0.96% to $49.32 a barrel earlier on, while U.S. WTI crude futures gained 1.03% to $46.07 a barrel. Meantime, the American Petroleum Institute said on Tuesday that U.S. crude oil, gasoline and distillate stocks rose sharply last week, with crude stocks jumping by 1.14 million barrels, contrary to analyst forecasts for a draw of 1.42 million barrels. Official weekly oil data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration is due later today. Now, the EIA said on Tuesday that U.S. crude oil production is expected to slide next year by 240,000 barrels per day to 11.1 million barrels per day. And that's a smaller decline compared to a previous forecast for a slide of 290,000 barrels per day. And gold prices eased today as encouraging vaccine developments pushed investors towards riskier equities, although hopes for more U.S. stimulus kept bullion near 2-week highs hit in the previous session. Spot gold fell 0.3% to $1,865.46 an ounce after hitting its highest since November the 23rd at $1,875.07 on Tuesday, while U.S. gold futures eased 0.3% to $1,870 $0.20. Now, silver slipped 0.7% to $24.38 an ounce, and platinum was up 0.6% at $1,028.17, and palladium was up 0.1% at $2,311.87 an ounce. Now let's get to South Africa, where the GDP data released yesterday showed a massive rebound of 66.1% in the third quarter of the year. And that reflects the economy's recovery from the height of the COVID-19 lockdown, although this is on a seasonally adjusted and annualized basis. But let's get the reaction of the chief economist at the Bureau for Economic Research, Mr. Hugo Pienaar, who joins us now on the program. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on the program. Now, did this rebound in the economy come as a surprise to you?
Not really. The extent of it was certainly strong, but I mean, this is purely a function of the reopening of the economy, right? So in South Africa, we had very strict lockdown restrictions in April in particular, but throughout the second quarter. And then as we moved through the second quarter, those started to be relaxed. They were relaxed further in the third quarter. So you basically go from a very lockdown situation to starting to open up. And that was mainly what we saw. At the end, the magnitude was more or less in line with what we expected, but it was certainly quite a bit better than the consensus expectation that Bloomberg put out a week before the data came out.
All right, in 1 minute now, because we're out of time, what is your outlook for the fourth quarter?
Yeah, so I mean, we already have some data coming through. But it does suggest a material slowdown in growth, but we still expect a slight positive growth number even for the fourth quarter.
I'd like to appreciate your time, Chief Economist at the Bureau for Economic Research, Mr. Hugo Pienaar. Thank you for joining us on the program. And that's where we end today's show. Thank you for watching. I am BC Adebayo.